Okay, everyone. Now that the dust has settled a bit from live action Cowboy Bebop, I might talk about spoilers. Naturally, this will also involve spoilers for the anime to an extent. I will always be talking about any changes that are relevant to this video, but to keep things simple, I'll be talking about what I liked, what didn't work as well, and the review of a major character. Let's start with the good first. Obviously, translating a work as visually distinctive as anime to live action will require a lot of work to go into production, and that aspect is one of the ones that stood out at me the most. The maintenance of iconography from both the TV series and the Knocking on Heaven's Door movie that'd be tricky for anyone interested in live action, but all it's considered, it does fine. One of the creative production designers of the series, industry veteran Grant Major, whose extended credits include the Lorraine trilogy, definitely liked the look of the sets and location being portrayed. The retrofuturistic 1970s infused aesthetic is so baked in the material that I'm glad it was retained. In brief glimpses of a 22nd century Earth I've seen look faithfully recreated. I'm also curious how the combat will be handled. I can argue that it keeps the unconventional approach in the source a different way. Everything from wuxia films to pulp sci-fi to film noir, influenced fights in the anime, and all things considered, it does a decent job. Not quite the Hallway fight in the Daredevil series, fingers crossed about the revival of Charlie Cox finally getting made, but it's also not Iron Fist either. Maybe that can be soft rebooting into a Shang-Chi sequel. At least identify each character by their fighting style, much as I could in the source. Of course, my favorite aspect is that Yoko Kanno and the Seatbelts came back to do the music. This is a freeform jazz soundtrack which is notably hard to imagine the series without, or worse, someone else trying to replace it. Well, it's honestly not expecting the story to be on the same magnitude as the original, but at the very least, have more effort put into than other adaptations talked about before on this channel. That's not to say there isn't still room for improvement. While there were indeed a fair amount of violent scenes, sensual moments, and dirty words in the original anime as well, they were within reason. Those material understood they don't have to rely solely on someone to make something quote-unquote adult. They need a strong story and interesting characters to truly succeed at that. That's why even though Netflix rates the anime at TVMA, it's not different from other places I've watched it and fits a description way better than something like, say, Future Diary does to me. Probably rebooting that one soon, not looking forward to that. Granted, many subtitles used of these are retained, but the dialogue is way more swearing than the source material. Admittedly not a turn on its own, but then its plot points need this version about finding a lead to a bounty in the Red Light District, complete with gear that made me think, well, somebody saw Pulp Fiction, remember that scene with Zed. Then there's also some dialogues I won't mention here because of how raunchy and unintentionally hilarious they are. Let's just say that Faye Valentine sharing her name with infamous adult film stars is no longer the filthiest thing about this verse. On that note, there is clear license taken with Julie Ambitious arcs with Spike, and I admittedly have mixed feelings about it. On one hand, it's a change that gives me flashbacks to Jack Napier killing Bruce Wayne's parents rather than Joe Chill or another unknown assailant. On the other, I totally understand why they did it, even with my love for Vicious from the original anime. As for his Death Note line, as previously mentioned, this adaptation leaves some effort put into it than that, though that's admittedly a low bar to clear. Now comes the part everyone's been talking about, the live action depiction of Radical Edward, played by Eden Perkins. So, after Spike has his fateful fight with Vicious, he's approached by Edward with a new bounty several to collect. Seeing as Ed was one of my favorite characters in the original, I don't know what to feel based on one scene, but at the same time, I'm curious to see how it would have turned out, though, given the recent cancellation of the series played, it's not going to happen. Don't know about any Spy Kids comparisons. I'm personally wondering more if or when Machete Kills Get in Space getting made. This is actually not that different from a humanized version of L337 from Solo. I compared that character to a droid version of Ed before. As someone who had no frame of reference for her cast, I could at least believe, much like her counterpart, she could gleefully bring down satellites like someone playing a Minesweeper. Wake the duck up, cowboy. We have a city to burn. Bottom line, I reaffirm this adaptation is an imperfect, if watchable take on a series I absolutely love. Not a complete train wreck, but not exactly adaptations jumps as live action anime adaptations either. Much sometimes wonder what could have happened if Shane Black made his version of Death Note. Can you imagine Nightly finding out at Christmas? I can. I can only wonder what would have happened to Wachowski's television story was one that we ended up getting, and if they had moved forward the second season as opposed to getting canned. I guess I can think it over while I'm at Matrix Resurrections and contemplating what lies ahead. Until next time, see you, Cowgirl, someday, somewhere.